And I have started recording.
Thank you. So I don't think mine will take up the whole time. I know we've got Dr. Wise's. I think he's coming in at 1:30. So we've got that. So the morning was great. So great presentations this morning from Dr. Henneman and Dr. Shen. Really good. We also had some great questions as well. So as I had introduced myself earlier, I'm Dr. Richard Mythe. So I'll be starting my third year this fall at Kentucky State University. Also want to welcome all our summer apprenticeship program students here. So I hope you're having a good summer. The areas that I'm going to cover are security, also mobile security. As you know, security has been in the news recently, and there's been a lot of talk about it, especially with the Colonial Pipeline and also the meat packing company hacks. So you've heard about it in the news. There's definitely a need for security professionals in this field. So we'll also talk about that. I'm going to start off with this presentation that I gave during Cybersecurity Month. So it was, as you know, during COVID-19, a lot of us went to work at home and also went to, also learning from home or attending classes from home. So was a presentation that I had given in October 2020. So remote secure work and remote learning during COVID-19, which is still appropriate as some of us are still working from home and working remotely. So I'm going to start off with tips. So we're going to cover tips for remote secure work during COVID-19 and tips for remote secure learning during COVID-19. And then I'll leave it open for questions and answers. So when you take a look at this picture, you see, you recognize some of the large companies that you see, Kmart, Whole Foods, Equifax, eBay, Xbox, PlayStation, Gmail, a lot of us that use. So you recognize these corporations. Also Uber is there too. So at some point, these corporations had security breaches. So what
Dr.
you don't
Mahdi,
see in this,
I'm sorry, could
yeah,
you put your screen in presentation mode, your PowerPoint?
yeah, of course,
Thank you,
yeah,
sir.
I'll do that. So what you don't see is a lot of the smaller corporations. So you hear about the bigger ones that happen, but you don't hear about the smaller ones. Same thing with the Colonial Pipeline that was hacked, and you saw a rise in gas prices. So some of these are the bigger ones, also the meat packing. So you don't hear about the mom and pop, the smaller companies that get hacked. So there's definitely a need for security in that area, as we'll see some of the statistics next. So here you see, 70% of the data breaches happen to smaller and medium businesses. Like I was saying, if you look at the slide previously, you'll see, we don't hear about the smaller companies. You don't hear about the smaller mom and pop stores that get breached, and they don't have the ability to hire some of these bigger corporations to do security for them. So there is definitely a need for security for the smaller businesses as well. So 39% of the global data breaches caused by malware were ransomware. So this also falls into the statistics of what we had seen with the Colonial Pipeline hack. It was, I don't remember exactly how many dollars it was, but it was a very large amount of ransomware that was requested. So 58% of small to medium businesses have experienced a data breach in the last 12 months. So you continuously see these data breaches for smaller corporations. Malicious hackers are now attacking computers and networks at a rate of one attack every 39 seconds. So you can see how frequent it is, these attacks that are happening. So it takes 6 months on average to detect a data breach for companies that don't have a security program. So there could be something that's happening within the corporation that they don't even know about until it's too late. So until their information has been stolen. So there is definitely a need for a lot of security professionals, and I think it's I believe if you just do a Google search on computer security jobs, you'll see all kinds of jobs that are opening. They just don't have qualified people to fill these jobs at this moment. So I think they predicted like a 39 or 40% growth in the next 10 years. So by 2031, they'll need a lot more security professionals. So why are cyber attacks on the rise? As you know, one of the reasons is increased attacks. We've got smartphones, tablets, IoT devices. So also folks are wearing other Fitbits and Apple Watches as I do. So, you have an increase of this attack surface. So we are getting more connected to the internet. And so there is, smart devices everywhere. And so the attack surface is increasing. So there's an increase of more hacks. Lack of training. So definitely there is training that's required here at Kentucky State University. We have Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and there's also training available. So, and as I was mentioning, smaller corporations may have the lack of training. They may not have the infrastructure or may not even have the funding for security. So evolving technologies, I kind of covered that. So you have more and more devices, like smartwatches and other things. I think there's also, recently I saw a smart toothbrush. So there's the tag. So, I think it's a little too much to be connected to the internet, but there is, I think Quip has designed a new smart toothbrush. It'll tell you the way you're brushing your teeth and how many times you're brushing your teeth. I think it's a little too much, but some people may find that useful. So evolving technologies, lack of third-party due diligence. Yeah, so hiring a third party, corporations may hire another party to do their security, kind of handing it off so they're not responsible for that. So cybercrime, of course, is a growing business. So if you look at it from the cyber crime or the criminal's perspective, it is a very growing business, and they're making all kinds of money as a demand for ransomware. Lack of management support. Your managers may not support that. Of course, one point could be, looking at it from a cost perspective, that it's just too expensive. Security is, by the time it happens, it's an afterthought. Paralysis, not doing anything about it. Well, it's happening. Insider threat. That's a good one. So you could have a disgruntled employee who's not happy with the company. So they may take information and sell it to another corporation to make money. Of course, that's an insider threat. So there's always that. So as I had mentioned, shortage of cybersecurity professionals. We really need a lot of cybersecurity professionals. So these are just the different types of threats. You've got malware. I'm sure you've heard of malware. So it's a software that gains unauthorized access to your computer. So you've heard of this, I'm sure, on the news, and also from, if you've taken some intro computer science security classes, you've heard this as well. Ransomware. So we've heard of this. So usually it's a malicious software that's designed to steal, extort money by blocking access. So they're like, okay, you won't get any access to your files until you pay this ransomware. So I think they take their payments in Bitcoins, so they can't be traced. So a lot of government have been, if I recall correctly, have fallen into this ransomware, and they haven't backed up their systems, so they had to pay the ransom to get this get this information back that they need to run their system. I think it's happened to police departments and government offices. So it is a big problem. Phishing. So if you get emails that says, "Oh, click here," so we get here at the school, we get phishing attempts, and then we have our IT department that says, "Okay, don't click on that link," and so it may take you to a website. It may try to steal information like credit card, and things like that. So cryptojacking, so unauthorized use of someone else's computer to mine cryptocurrency. So that's happening also. 0 days, so it takes advantage of security vulnerabilities before the vulnerability becomes generally known. So there are 0 days between the time the vulnerability is discovered and the first attack. So social engineering, I'm sure you've heard of this. So a tactic kind of trying to get information, or someone may call you or email you, "Hey, I'm calling from the IT department. I need your information. I need your date of birth. I need your social security number." So never give out this personal information from social, and no matter who calls, or they're not going to ask you for your, usually your credit card companies are not going to call you to ask you. I mean, you're going to call them if there's a problem. So, and also governments are not going to call you, you're going to contact you from a different way. So a lot of these do exist, and so it is a problem. So during the pandemic, we had this transitioning over from corporate office to virtual office, and this took place all of a sudden, and companies were not ready to go from all of a sudden. I think with us it happened. We were supposed to come back, and then we were told, no, we're going to have classes remotely. We're going to be working remotely. So there's this was designed by Hammer Consulting, Dr. Bennett Hammer, who is working with us on our cybersecurity server. So they came up with the following 10 steps to make your work from home and attending classes from home more secure. So make sure it has the latest updates. So you want to make sure that your computer has the latest updates. So many vulnerabilities are out there. So exist in out-of-date software and the perfect entry point for a hacker. So they're looking for those holes that may be out there. So you got to be protected to keep your data protected. Make sure your software is up to date. So make sure your operating system or your mobile devices are up to date. So sometimes you'll see these messages that come up, and a lot of times we tend to ignore those, and that could be a problem because updates do take time. Install and update antivirus and anti-malware tools. So make sure you have those. Ensure that your computer has the latest antivirus and anti-malware software installed. So these tools are highly valuable, are designed to reduce the risk and keep your computer safe from threat actors that want access to your company's data. So again, these reduce the risk. So it doesn't completely say, okay, it's 100% secure. It's not going to be 100% secure unless you turn off your computer and lock it into a room or something, a steel bolted room. But then again, then you can't access your information, or even if there's an earthquake, you might lose that information. So it reduces the risk. It doesn't completely get rid of, the threat. So make sure you use a virtual private network, so VPN. So allows you to create secure. So this is a way of connecting to having a secure connection either to your work or your school. So a VPN creates an encrypted tunnel between you and a remote server, and all your internet traffic is routed through this tunnel. so your data is secure from prying eyes along the way. So, so if you're working on your home network, or if you're on a public Wi-Fi, make sure you're using VPN. So a lot of the hackers probably may hang out at a coffee shop or something where you're connected using their free Wi-Fi, so they can eavesdrop and get your information, from your password to any kind of confidential information that you may have on your devices. So separate your network. So, connect your computer to a different network than the rest of your remote location. So it may be as simple as using the company VPN to create that secure connection. If your mobile data plan allows for unlimited data, consider using the hotspot on your phone instead of a guest network or your home network. So, I mean, that's a consideration. So if you want to separate your networks, your family can use your regular network, and while you're working, you could use a secure network from a hotspot on your phone, or use a VPN. So password protect and lock your computer. So, I mean, these are standard these days. So make sure you password protect your computer. And also remember, so it's also a behavioral. Security is just not everything that's technical. So it's also a behavioral. So make sure that you use your company laptop for company work, and you don't use it for other things, or let your friends use it. So that may have happened during the pandemic. So you have your work computer. You may be doing shopping on Amazon, or doing other shopping things that you do during your lunch hours. So use your work computer only for work purposes only. Create a different user account for family or friends. So if you have a computer that's used by multiple people at home, multiple family members, so make sure that you create a separate profile for each of those family members. So this is, I think it was more of a problem in the past. So create unique and complex passwords. A lot of the passwords people will use their personal names, birth dates, pet names, things like that. So here it kind of gives you, I think most like accounts have like, okay, you have to have so many uppercase, lowercase combinations, so many characters. So here it's just a general, it says, use a combination of uppercase and lowercase letters, numbers, special characters that are at least 12 to 14 characters in length. Don't share or save passwords on the computer. Also use multi-factor authentication where it is offered. So here at Kentucky State University, I think last year they started two-factor authentication. So using multiple authentication definitely will make your password more secure. Use the latest internet browsers, so make sure your browsers are up to date. Also, cyber attacks can come from there. If you have an old browser, you go to a site that is not secure, and you have the potential of getting malware or other cyber attacks from there. So be careful where you click on. So you might get an email, like I said, email attachment. Make sure, you sometimes, I think a lot of the banks are having problems with this, that you go to a website that really looks like your bank's website, but it's not really it's not a secure site. Make sure you examine the URL, or you mouse over the link to make sure that it's really that site. So back up your data. So make sure you back up your data regularly. So make sure you create a copy. So if a lot of the major corporations back up their data on a frequent basis. At the University of Kentucky, I remember when I used to work, so they had daily backups. They also did tape backups. They did long-term backups where they would take these backup information and they would store it off-site. I'm not sure if you've heard of Highbridge Springs Water. It's a water company here in Kentucky, but they also have a cave where they store data. So they store a lot of old data, a lot of backup data that's stored there. So they're physically taken over there and stored. So in case if there's some kind of disaster, even natural disaster that happens on site, a storm, earthquake, things like that. So that data is stored on another site where you can go physically and get that data. So it may not be the latest up to date, depends on the frequency that I've done it. So I've actually gone to that. It was a really good field trip, and you get to see all the data, all the old tapes that are stored going back years and decades that they have some data, and also they have medical records and things. So a lot of our medical records in the past were on paper. So they have my medical record that's going back to when I was 10 years old. So a lot of that is stored there. A lot of it has been digitized. And so a lot of that data is stored there. So email security, we had kind of talked about this. Sometimes you'll get messages and the messages you will see look like it's coming from you, from an official or within the university, but it's not. So, that kind of attack can happen. So here's an example of an email phishing example. So it says, due to an unexpected system outage, we'll need to limit access to your email server. So contingent and part-time employees will not have access to email during that time. All regular employees will need to explicitly request access to their email during the outage by adding your name to the following list. So, you can see, okay, this probably looks like a real email. You click on it, you add your name, and they ask you for some personal information. So, you're giving away your information. So be careful about these. So, and I think we got one here at the school, at the university a few days ago, something like that. It says, don't click on that link. So IT will go back and review these and says, do not click on this link. So you can mouse over that link and carefully examine that link to make sure that usually it's not something that will be sent by the university. So if you mouse over, it will show you what the link is as this example. So if the link actual site doesn't match what it looks like on the hyperlink. So stop here for a little bit and see if we have any questions. Okay. Let's see if I can get back to my presentation. So password length, there's different ways to make your password more strengthen your password, adding a single character to a password boosts its security exponentially. So a lot of people use, dictionary words, and that's a dictionary attack. So there's different kinds of password cracks that are out there. So you don't even have to be a security an expert in hacking. A lot of this software you can download, and I think the term they use is script kiddie. So you don't even have to know the internal workings of these hacking tools. You just have to understand how they work, and you can utilize these to steal information. Here it talks about how to create a complex password. So don't use dictionary words, use upper and lower case letters. So don't use your username. A lot of the systems will actually recognize that and say, oh, you're using your username, don't use that. Or it will, recognize that you're using a dictionary word, so we take that. But some systems do and some systems don't. So you really have to make sure that you're using a strong password. And like it says, we kind of mentioned this earlier, so don't use personal information like your name, address, birthday, anniversaries, pet names, you know, your wife's name, your girlfriend's name, things like that. Here it gives you a good example of a sentence. So I love black olive and pepperoni pizza with extra cheese. So you can see it takes the first letter of each word, and some of them like and or a, it substitutes the ampersand. So you can do a substitution. For a, you can see it did a substitution for you know, the at sign. So you can substitute different characters. And so as a sentence is much easier to remember, and taking the first letter or taking the last letter of that sentence. So make sure that you create unique passwords for each account. Don't use the same password for all your accounts. So if one of your account gets hacked, all your other accounts are going to get hacked too. So make sure that you have, I know it's easy to remember one password, you know, there's password vaults that you can use that are out there. So make sure that you use different passwords for your different systems that you have. So, you know, passwords should be complex. I kind of touched on this, you know, use for A, you can use at, and then you can substitute for S, you can substitute the $sign. So password should be complex, you know, should use combinations of uppercase and lowercase letter numbers, special characters, should be at least 12 to 14 characters in length. So password should be unique and different for every account. Password should never be shared, so don't share your password even with your best friend. Password should never be written down. So you'll see sticky notes in someone's office to write down their password. It's a good way for someone to steal that information. So here are the recommendations. This is from Dr. Hammer. So be careful what you click on. Back up your data regularly and check the backup. Patch promptly. Protect all endpoints, including mobile devices. Encrypt sensitive data. Use two-factor authentication. Always use a VPN. Create unique password. Cybersecurity training, that's important. So make sure you attend all the training. So plan. I'm going to stop and see if we have any questions. I know I'm running a little behind. Are there any questions? I know there were some. I saw some comments. Let me see if I can bring up the chat window. Okay, I see there's some comments up there. All right, I'll go ahead and go on to the current slide. So a lot of us, you know, when the pandemic had started, had gone into, you know, this remote learning environment. And a lot of us were not really used to it. So, and a lot of our students really did not like the remote learning environment. I believe this fall we'll all be back in the classroom, which is all great news for everybody. So from the remote learning, it was pretty much the same, you know, and you know, it was a lot of massive amount of people that were affected that had to go, you know, to learn from home. So it's learning from home was a totally different ball game. So students had to go, so it was kind of isolated environment, you know, and a lot of the schools network were not protected. So educational institution had to invest a lot of resources to reduce the threats from the organization and students. And if you recall that a lot of Zoom meetings were being hacked, and students or people that were not supposed to be there, hackers were hacking into Zoom meetings. So we had a lot of issues. So here it just talks about, different security ball game. You're not protected by your institute's cybersecurity infrastructure, so you're dependent on your personal computer. So you don't have the liberty of knowing that your information is safeguarded by the school. You're responsible for the safety of all information you share online. So it was kind of your responsibility to make sure that all your information were safe instead of being in the school environment where they have their cybersecurity infrastructure within their intranet. So here it talks about, security as a combined effort. So make sure that you're aware of the necessary safety precautions while studying from home, and it puts them, put them into practice. As the institute provided you with essential security checklist, make sure you go through that checklist. Ensure you put place, basic security protocols. So a lot of it, things that you had to come up with on your own to protect your personal information. Keeping your student account safe from login. So some of the same things that we had covered earlier. So don't share your login with friends or family. So pretty much the same. Keeping your student account same, so pretty much same things we had covered before. So watch out for odd behaviors, things that are don't usually happen. So your computer freezing up, odd behavior could be malware that's on your computer. So things like that, phishing attacks we had talked about. So a lot of the same information as working from home. So antivirus solutions. So I've got some references here. So I'm gonna see if anyone has any questions. Okay. Trying to make sure that I stay within the time slot that's been provided to me. So I had come up with something on project ideas that I'll cover. If no one has any questions. So security project ideas. So develop a password generator. So you can use, can everyone see that? Am I sharing that?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. So you can use this link that I've provided. So if you click on that link, it'll take you to a program that I had modified. Let me see if it goes there. So it kind of generates a password. It's one of the concepts we had talked about. So when you have a sentence, it takes the first letter of each word, and then it prints out. If we can see that demo, I think my computer has decided not to go there. Let me see which one it was here. There it is. You can see the screen. I'm not going to go into the details of the C++ program. I did rewrite the driver. So you can go to that link. Let me share that link with you. If I click on share. Make sure I'm still connected. So if you say welcome to KSU computer.
Richard, we can't see that because you only share.
Oh, I'm not sharing the PowerPoint presentation.
Exactly.
Okay. Let me share the whole thing. So this is an online C++ compiler. This is something we kind of had to adjust to during the pandemic because a lot of students were not able to access our Linux box. So that had to do with some of the policies that the IT department had set. So they were being secure, so we can't really blame them. And also some of the new laptop students had gotten, they weren't allowed to install any kind of software on there. So I had to kind of use this online C++ compiler, which works okay. So I've made this program available. I'll also share it with you so you can take a look at it. So C++ is COS 108 and 109 that we cover in our intro classes. So you may want to take this existing code and see if you can modify it. So I had modified the driver, made some modifications to the driver, and you can see that it takes the first letter of the sentence up here. Let me make this a little bit bigger. It says, please enter a string. Welcome to KSU Computer Science. And you see the password is WTKCS. So you can, as a project, you may want to think about, I can take this program, you can take this program, and then see if you can say add different characters. Like if it's an S, change it to a $, or add some numbers or things like that, randomized numbers. So in C++, you can learn about the random, how that works, the random number generator functions. You can put a seed and then generate a random number to add at the end or at the beginning of this password. So there's also password generators. So this is kind of something that you can play around with. So I'll make that available. Let's see on the chat window if you want to take a look at it. Anyone have any questions? So I'll share all these documents after my presentation. I'll put it, I'll send it to Mr. Sandifer and also share it on this chat window. So you can go back and take a look at it and access the links and things like that. So I know I've taken up a lot of time. I think in less than 10 minutes, Dr. Wise is up. This is one of the research my students did. So I'll kind of give you a brief overview of it. My student did research on mobile security. So let me share this from the beginning. So mobile security, like we saw in the last presentation, a lot of people use mobile devices, and we had seen students attending classes from their mobile devices, students submitting homework from their mobile devices. So there's an increase in mobile devices. So there's also an increase of risk in mobile devices and privacy and security issues that are associated with it as well. So my student had gone through the internal review board process and got the permission from the school to kind of poll the students on their behaviors of mobile devices. Do they connect to public Wi-Fi? Do they share mobile devices? What kind of applications they have on their mobile devices? So things like that. So there are a lot of interesting information that we found out from there. As you can see, some of the, you can look at this, graph. You can see how increase of mobile devices have gone up, from cell phone and smartphone devices. So we're connected. So we did a survey at KSU. So we can see 60% of our students mostly use their mobile devices. And we can see how many students use desktops and tablets, very few. So we took this data and compared it to the national average. So these are some of the questions that we ask, how many students connect to public Wi-Fi, You know, so we didn't have that many students that connected to public Wi-Fi, most because we have good Wi-Fi connection on our campus when it was taken at the time. So there were less than 20% connection. So we were asking all these questions to our students. So how often do you use VPN? You know, we had more than 50% that used it less than a month. So so these were different questions that we asked, and you know, what kind of applications they had. You know, they had entertainment apps was number 3. Game apps was number 2. As you know, games were very popular. Utility apps were popular too. So these are all interesting research that one of our undergraduate student did. He's part of the National Science Foundation research program that we have here at Kentucky State University. Also, some of the top browsers that we had found, you know, Google Chrome was one of the top browsers used by our students, then Firefox. It was surprising to see that IE was still on the list. You know, IE is no longer supported. So we were surprised to see that people were still using Internet Explorer. If you recall that, you know, that was one of the problems that people were using unsecured browser. Obviously, this is outdated and not secure. So these are some of the things that we had talked about before, you know, data theft, fake requests, phishing, brand impersonation, ransomware. So some of the common activities which place our privacy and security. So, you know, of folks sharing information online. So that's always an issue there with their location information. You know, cyber criminals can find out where you are. If you're not home, they can, you know, get information from your home. So things like that. So also some of the things we had also talked about, mitigation techniques, use of VPN, strong password firewall. So we've already covered this. So just wanted to give you a brief overview of that, of the research that's available here that you can take advantage of. And I think our students really enjoy it. So. And the conference was virtual this year, but I believe starting next year, everything will be back to normal. The Southeast Regional Conference, I believe, takes place in the Southeast states. It was supposed to be in Atlanta last year. I think the year before it was Raleigh, North Carolina. I know a few times it's been in Lexington, Florida. So I know our students team up with the University of Kentucky students, and they have a big bus that they go along with. So a lot of fun. They have the robotics competition. I believe Dr. Henneman has participated in that in the past. So that's very great. So we always look forward to having students on the robotics team. So a lot of great activities that take place. So, the last thing I wanted to touch upon was data science. Let me share the project idea. I think I wanted to go over some more project ideas. I think Dr. Henneman had talked about this already. This is looking at cryptography. I believe he covered Caesar cipher. So that's could be a mobile security or project idea using Caesar cipher for encryption. Also here, if you're interested in policy, you can develop your own policy. You can go here to this link, and it has I believe a company policy, just a sample. You can create your own policy. So I know one of my graduate students that took a security policy class with me, he created his policy home for mobile device usage, connecting to Wi-Fi for his kids. I'm not sure if the kids were happy about that, but he did have a policy at home. So that's kind of interesting. This is the mobile security. So this is a Caesar cipher, which Dr. Henneman covered in great detail. You can go to this site. It's kind of interesting. I think it's based out of France, I believe. I was looking up some employment information growth for cybersecurity. So. But it has a web-based tool that you can kind of shift. Yeah. So you can type in your message, you know, the shift. So this is a web tool that you can play around with. It's got also different, the Railfan cipher, it's got all the different ciphers. So if you know, you can type in the shift and you can put in a message. Let me see where the message window is. Here it's by default, it has Caesar. So you can say, welcome, Caesar encoder, welcome to KSU. Plain text, welcome to KSU computer science. And then you can encrypt that. If I click on the right place. So encrypt. If it works, it should show you the encrypted message. For some reason, it's not showing.
Yeah, what it's the case that you only have the uppercase letters as alphabet. So you got to click use the full ASCII table. No, use the full ASCII table. Just that should work.
All right, thank you. Yeah, change this to shift. Should have left it as it was. Huh. Let me just go type in all capital. KSU. Huh. That's strange. I don't know why it's not working. It usually does work.
Here's another project, right? Debug that website.
Yeah, so you can debug. It did work last night, I saw it. But I'll put this up as well. The last thing I wanted to cover was data science. I know I'm out of time. I know Dr. Wise has the last hour. So before I steal his time, just wanted to go over data science. Probably won't have time for that. But data science and data visualization, I'll talk about it briefly. It's a growing field, and you may have heard the term that a picture is a 1,000 words. So during COVID-19, you saw all these different graphs and charts. So one of the last projects that I have on here is like you could do a data viz project. And there's some great free tools out there that you can use. Like I said, I'll include it. And if you go to Tableau, it has like a daily a visualization that you can vote on. So there's plenty of great jobs out there and data visualization. There was a site that I found that you can use to, they have data preloaded. So it's called Data Wrapper. So you can either upload your data or you can use the data that they have there and see this is the CO2 emissions graph. If I can pull it down, see it better. So you can see the growth of CO2 emissions worldwide, how it's growing. So this goes all the way back to 1850 when data had started collecting, the industrial era approaching, you see. So it tells you, gives you a lot of information. So different emissions that are being released into the air. So different kinds of data to play around with. One of the project ideas that I have is you can download some of the COVID-19 data and kind of look at it, the growth of COVID-19, which month. And so you kind of see this bell curve. So I teach some of the databases classes and I like to use real data that's available out there. A lot of the data you can download from the Cabinet of Health and Family Services where I worked, and Dr. Henneman's former neighbor and also a classmate of mine We worked there, so a lot of great jobs in that area as well. So, and as I said, I'll share all this information and all the slides with you all. So I'll hand it over to Dr. Wise. Let me stop sharing.
Well, I'll just be reiterating a few things that you had to say.
That's all right.
Well, many of these things bear repeating, and I mean, well, we do that in computer science a lot too. That we reiterate different things and different concepts, so that
Right.
Everything eventually sticks.
Yeah, and there's a lot of overlap and stuff. So, all right, I'll stop sharing.
Good presentation.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, so before I get into talking about hackers and penetration testing and ethical hacking, I wanted to bring out the degree programs that we have in computer science. And there's just not a single course you can take or several courses that you can take to learn everything that you need to learn to become involved in ethical hacking or penetration testing or to become a hacker. It's not something that's that simple. You're not just going to take a few courses and, oh, I'm this big hacker, right? So,
Hey, Dr. Wise, could you launch your PowerPoint in presentation mode?
It's not coming up.
Just make it go full screen, the PowerPoint itself.
Yeah, just press F5. It should do the trick.
How's that?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Looks good. Thank you.
Does that make everybody happy?
We're happy.
All right. That's my goal, to make everybody happy. Okay, so I wanted to show this relationship with, there's so many classes that you take that you're not only learning coding or programming or the different operating systems or hardware, software, all this stuff has a relationship to each other. To be successful in penetration testing or ethical hacking, you have to know all the ins and outs, all the loopholes, where these holes exist, all the different ports that are open, what type of operating systems that you're trying to penetrate, and the coding that these different software programs use behind the scenes to do what they do. So all these degree programs that we offer have a lot of these courses inside all of these programs so that you can get a good understanding and a good basic knowledge of what you need to do to become proficient in, if you wanted to have a career related to ethical hacking or penetration testing. I'm going to move this, everybody's little faces here taking up my screen. That's why I didn't want to go into that mode and that, but let's see if I can move it out of the way here. Okay. So I'm going to discuss a few things related to hacking. One of the exploits that Richard had went into was ransomware, among a lot of other different exploits and malware. I want to go into one specifically, which is ransomware, because that's one of the big popular ones that's in the news today that we see a lot of. We'll go into that here in a little while, some of those specific ones that are happening right now and have happened recently in the past. ethical hacking, which you can relate ethical hacker, the title, you can relate that to penetration testing of sorts, or as to a pen tester. So how do these topics relate to each other? Okay, so if we want to discuss and go into some of these things, we want to know, are these topics relevant today? Is it something that's happening around the world right now? What are some of the headlines that are out there? What do some of these world leaders say? Is it too late? Well, it's never too late to try to stop, or to bring up some type of firewall to stop some of this stuff from dissipating. So we want to do some research to see what some of these leaders say. What can we really do about it? Can we really make an environment 100% safe and secure? So some of the headlines in the news that I researched was the Volkswagen hack. 3 million customers had their information stolen. I think that's going to shortly go into some kind of litigation. McDonald's hack, the Electronic Arts game stealing code sources. Europe's really being eat up right now with all this exploitation of all the different things because of the pandemic. The Colonial Pipeline, which Richard had mentioned. JBS, which is a company that transports meat products all around the United States. They recently were hacked. And one of the most recent one is the Florida hack. The government sites were hacked, and they paid the ransom of $4 million. Because once you get hacked, it's kind of too late. So you have to fix that problem then, and then go back and look how that happened and maybe find some way to fix it quickly. Because once you've been hacked and once they're in your internal network, they stay in your network. So what's the odds of them doing that again? The odds are pretty good, right? And once they find a way, once these hackers find a way into one network, they can use that same pathway in a lot of other networks, right? If they have a proven way where they've got in and made money. And $4 million, that's a lot of money. So what are these, because of some of these hacks and some of these exploitations that have recently happened, a lot of world leaders, a lot of government leaders, professionals are chiming in on this, trying to persuade people to go ahead and make changes, maybe hire some of these security people to try to defend their networks. So these are just some of the highlights that I saw. President Biden is trying to get involved and get a lot of his people involved in some of this stuff, because it's really, they should have been working on this stuff for the last 10 years. You know, it's not one of those things where no news is good news, nothing's happening, so we're not going to be hit by something. So it's something that we should have really been looking at. All these government agencies should have been looking at this for several years back, because it's just a matter of time. There's so many hackers in the world today, and you're not just fighting one hacker, you're fighting millions of hackers, right? And once these hackers, once you come on the news and say, oh, I'm Joe Bob and I own company X, we have the greatest network in the world, I have the greatest professionals in the world, you can't hack us. Well, in 30 minutes, you're probably going to be hacked, right? You don't get on news and say how great you are and how secure your network is, because there's no such thing as 100% secure network. There's no such thing as, I'm going to load all this software today, I'm going to update, I'm going to put in all my patches today, and then I'm just going to go on vacation for 2 weeks. There's no such thing, right? So you've got these large companies like Microsoft, you have the military, and they have thousands of people that sit there, and all they do is watch the traffic coming in and out of their network, seeing who's coming in, who's going in, who's doing what, who's removing information, who's putting information in. They have people that actually all they do are watch monitors and monitor all this traffic, right? So that's how they catch a lot of these things, by watching the traffic going back and forth, right? So we should have been doing this for a long time. We have been, but it's when you're not being hacked and you think you've got all these great people working for you and everything's wonderful, that really lets your guard down to being attacked, to somebody sliding in somewhere. So what can we do about these attacks? These are some people that I've researched that are discussing some of these attacks, what's going on, what we plan on doing. You know, you'll see here the Department of Justice signal plans to coordinate these efforts. The same efforts as they look as terrorism, because that's basically what it is it's cyber terrorism. It's digital terrorism, you know. Just like if you were to go hold somebody hostage, ransomware is holding something hostage till you get what you want. And you know, some of the headlines, it talks about the White House taking threats seriously. They're pushing for companies to take things more seriously, because one of the things is, if you're a contractor, say you're a military or a government contractor, there's certain guidelines that you have to follow as a vendor. And I would say security is becoming one of those things. So they're going to have a checklist for your company that you have to meet and follow, or they're not going to work with you. You're not going to be a vendor for them, because you being a vendor for them, if you're not safe and secure to their standards that they feel is being safe and secure, you can get to them through your small company in certain ways with data breaches. So they're not going to work with you if you're not as safe and secure as they think you should be, as they believe they are. So that's just some of the highlights in the world, in the news, what's going on. So now we can look at, you know, it looks to me like these topics are relevant. They're in the news every day. You might turn on the news right now and there'll be 5 different things that have happened just last night related to hacking or ransomware. So we're going to split that into 3 sections. We're going to split into hackers. We're going to talk a little bit about ransomware. Then we're going to talk a little bit about ethical hackers, ethical hacking, and penetration testing, which are really closely related to each other. So hackers, what are hackers? When we think of hackers, we hear in the news different colored hats that they wear, right? What are these colored hats? There's black hats, gray hats, and white hats, right? What's the color? You know, if you're already a hacker, you're either a good hacker, a bad hacker, or you think you're a good hacker, but you're still breaking the law. That's the gray hat hacker. So where do they come from? So we have white hat, gray hat, and black hat hackers. Where these hat colors come from? They come from the 20s, 30s, and 1940s. In most small towns throughout the United States, each of these small towns, and really no matter how small it was, all of these little towns had a little theater. It was not anything big like we see today. It's just a room with a few seats in it, and maybe some kind of a white wall where they could show a film on. And all the film is a lot of clips of pictures put together, and it's ran through a process that makes it slow or makes it fast to make these pictures look like this person's actually doing something. It's a lot of still clips, actually, is what it is. And back in those days, if you really watched the serials back then, you could see the clipping between each picture, because it didn't go fast enough to where you didn't see that transition from each picture. So back in those days, if you have any grandmas or grandpas that are still alive, you could ask them about these serial short movies. And a lot of them back then were Westerns, because that was the big thing, was cowboys and Indians, right? Or just cowboys, right? Good cowboys fighting the bad cowboys. A lot of these started out as silent films, and then they later moved to audio in the 30s and 40s, and then progressed after that. But back in those early days of these serial movies, which are short, 15, 20, 30-minute movies, and you could go in, you could pay your nickel, and you could spend 3 or 4 hours in there watching all kinds of these movies back to back. I know my grandmother and grandfather, they used to talk about it. They would go and spend their nickel or their dime or their penny and go in for the day and watch several hours of these movies. Well, that's where these colored hats come from, of hackers. So you have the white hat guy, who was basically the good guy. You have the guy with the black hat who was basically the bad guy. So you knew during that film who the good guy was and who the bad guy was, just like the Lone Ranger. The Lone Ranger was real popular back then. That's when it started, was in the 20s. So you could always tell his silver hat, he was the good guy, right? And then you had this other guy who had in a lot of these shorts, he had a gray hat. So the gray hat guy, during that movie, maybe he started out being good and later he got bad, or maybe he started out being bad and later through the serial he got to be good, right? So that's the gray hat. So today when we look at the gray hat hacker, it's someone who thinks they're doing something right and positive in their mind, but it's still illegal. It's still wrong to do that. So for instance, if I was a political person and I was a Democrat and I could hack into a Republican database and change some numbers or some figures or some data, steal something to use it, whatever, I think it's going to promote my party and help my party. So I think I'm doing something that's right and good in my mind, but it's still against the law and I can still go to prison for that, right? That's a gray hat hacker, right? And of course, the white hat hacker, he's the good guy. He's the penetration tester. He's the ethical hacker. He knows the limitations of what the law says. He knows the policies and procedures, and that's what he follows. And then there's the black hat hacker, which is basically the bad guy, right? Maybe it's for fun. Maybe it's for money. Maybe it's just a game between him and some other friends that he has around the world, right? But he has some underlying purpose within himself to hack and to be the bad guy. So the white hat hackers, ethical hackers, they could be freelance consultants. They could be employees of a company. Usually companies don't have their own penetration testers. They usually don't have their own people that try to find ways to sneak into their network. Usually that's something that they go outside and then they hire somebody to do that. So then the gray hat hacker, we just talked about them. Their aim is to fix flaws that they may see within the world, but by fixing those flaws, they're still doing something illegal. They think they're helping out, but it's still illegal, then they still can go to prison. Then the black hat, they could be self-pleasing. They could do it just for fun. It could be, they could get money out of it. They're trying to break into systems and products. Now, all this, computers have been out. I remember when I was first in flight school back in 89, we had computers had been around for a short time, not very long. In the school that I was at, we had a library that had like 5 computers in it, and none of it was graphic interfaced. It wasn't like Windows. It was all word text. It was all like a word program there on the screen, and everything you had to type in from scratch, right? So that was back then. So, and I know shortly after that, you know, the internet had been out for a short time after that, military relay for military purposes. That's why the internet was developed in the first place. So back then, you had what was called a dial-up connection to get on the internet, right? And you paid a certain amount of money for a certain amount of time or hours that you would spend on the internet. So you would dial up, you know, that phone number, whatever it was. It would go into the server. You had this little dial-up modem, it was called, and it would dial out. It would connect. You would hear it make all these beeping noises and this hissing sounds. You would get on, do what you had to do with the internet, and then would get back off because you're paying for that amount of time that you would get on the internet, right? So back then, if you went to Walmart or you went to any store and you bought a software program, when you opened up the box, it would have a serial number, something written inside there on a piece of paper. So you didn't need any connectivity to the internet to validate those products. So if I was a student at school and I needed a word processing program like Microsoft Word or something, for instance, back then. If I wanted that for school and I didn't have $100 to buy it, you could go out and you had these people called crackers. And what they would do is they would try to crack. They would download that program and they would try to by using programming languages, they would try to go into this and find out what the passwords are inside of these programs. And then they would come up with what was called a crack, and they would put it on their web page or wherever. If you knew some hackers, they would transfer these things between each other, this little crack. So then I would go home, I could go to Word and I could download that program onto my computer. But when I brought it up, it would come up and ask for a password. So what I would do is I would take this thing called a crack, I would load it in a certain place inside my hard drive. Then I would bring that program up and I could use it just like I had paid for it. So that was in the old days. So that's what hackers and crackers did back then, right? They went in, they tried to crack open these programs to make them more available. And back then, everybody hated Microsoft anyway, right? Any of these big gun corporations, everybody hated them, right? That's why Linux was developed. A bunch of people got together and said, let's get rid of Microsoft, let's do this. But that's something, here I go off on a tangent. So, but that was basically what hackers and crackers did back then. So next came a lot more of the internet age, a lot more connectivity. So then dial-ups were slowly getting out of the way. We quit kind of using those. Those were getting so expensive, costing too much money to get that kind of connectivity. So then they come up with these new technologies where you could stay connected 24/7, right? So that opened up with a whole new box of toys for these hackers and crackers because you're connected 24/7. You can sit here and watch your laptop or watch your PC, your clone, whatever it is, and you could watch the hard drive sit there and just flash back and forth. Something's hitting that behind the scenes that you don't really realize, right? So that leaves the ability, if all of a sudden there's billions of computers on this network, there's billions of potential people that I can crack into, right? So that's the way it was back then, and that's the way it is now. All of this technology staying connected 24/7 when you've got these cell phones and everything. Right now, if you look down at your cell phone, it's doing things behind the scenes you don't really realize, right? It's transferring data back and forth. It's asking questions to other devices, and it's getting answers back. So that's the way technology is today. So that's opened up a whole new thing as far as what we call one of these exploits, which is called ransomware. And that's just one of the exploits. That's where they somehow get in, or maybe you went to a website, clicked on the wrong thing. Maybe you accepted an email, clicked on the wrong thing. You didn't know who it was from. So now you've got your screens all blanked out and it says you've been got, pay this money, right? That's ransomware. So once you get got, there's only two ways to fix that. Pay the ransom or wipe it all out, all the operating system and everything, and take it back down to scratch and put it all back there from new, and make sure you don't do that thing again. There's only two ways around that. So ransomware is a type of malware that threatens to the victim's data and information to either block your access unless the ransom is paid. If you don't pay the ransom, they can delete whatever they got to, because they're right there in your device, right? So they can delete it and it's all gone. Anything you maybe have been saving or worked on, pictures, whatever you have. So that's why so many things in the news today, you see where people just go ahead and pay it. Maybe they go ahead and pay it and just keep their mouth shut and don't tell anybody that they're affected. I know one of the headlines that I showed earlier was this professional guy wants it to make mandatory that everybody who gets involved with ransomware, that there's some place that they put this data inside this database so they can keep track of this stuff, because there's so many people that don't even mention that they paid the ransom or that they were even attacked. So he thinks that this is going to help the world keep track of some of this stuff. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's one of his professional ideas, right? So what does ransomware mean to us, right? What if I pay the ransom one time? Can they still ask me for a ransom down the road? Well, yeah. They're in there already. They put something inside your system. You have no idea what it is unless you're a computer person, right? You don't know where that's at, where it even exists. You can Google it all day and remove all kinds of stuff from your PC, from your laptop. And you might remove something that didn't need to be removed, and it may not boot back up to begin with. So there's a whole lot of issues that this brings forward once you get hit the first time. Penetration testing, or pen testing. It's basically, I relate the ethical hacker to the penetration tester, because that's basically what they're doing, right? They have the ability and the knowledge to penetration test if they wanted to, right? And generally that's a white hat hacker. And generally what this penetration tester does, it could be one person, it could be multiple people in a company, right? And they are paid to try to hack into your network, right? So if they know all the ins and outs, they know the operating systems, they know all these different things, how to get into these networks. And what they do is they document what they tried, what worked, how they got in, and then when they get all these findings together, they give that documentation to the company owner or whoever that is, and then their IT team or whoever they have that's responsible, they go in and try to plug and patch these holes so that they can't get back in again the next time. So then when they try to get in again, maybe they can't get in, or maybe that may lead them to some other holes or vulnerabilities, right? Now, a pen tester just doesn't know defensive strategies, how to defend the network, how to stop things from coming in. They also need to know how that person is trying to get in, the holes that exist. They need to know both these avenues to be a real successful pen tester. They need to know both the offensive and defensive strategies. Now, what do you need to learn to be a successful pen tester or ethical hacker? Well, like I said, what they do is first is they research. They don't just a hacker, even just the basic hacker. He doesn't just one day wake up and say, oh, I think I want to be hacker. I hate IBM and I'm going to hack IBM, right? And you don't just go in and start hacking and start trying to get in. So you have to do research, right? You would be surprised how much information related to that company, IBM, for instance, which is on the internet, right? You can do some Google searching. It'll tell you how many employees they have. It'll tell you how their email addresses are set up. It'll tell you what kind of servers they have at their different facilities, what kind of router, if you really dig, what kind of routers, switches, brands, all this technology's out there. So what a good hacker or pen tester does is he researches this information, because all this information that's free that you can go find tells you all about their network. And when you understand all these technologies and operating systems and how to get into those, you can make a structure or a hierarchy of what you need to use, which specific programs that you can use, what languages, programming languages are used behind the scenes to try to hack into that network, right? That's just the first step, conducting research, right? Then by knowing these different programming languages that some of these operating systems and things are written in, C++, C, Python, whatever it might be, when you understand the way those languages are written, when you bring up that code on the screen, you can scroll down the screen and you can tell exactly what that information's doing, what it's trying to do, right? And you also need to learn the different operating systems, right? If they're Windows systems, if they're Linux, if they're Unix, they all have different ways and different tools that you can use to try to hack and get into these systems, right? Then you have to be good after you find your information. When you're starting to document, you need to put this documentation together in a packet that's presentable to somebody, right? So that's when you're documenting all these findings in a way that's readable and technologically not really advanced, but it has the terminology of that day of the audience that you're going to be giving that information to. So you're documenting those findings in the wording that those people are going to understand, because part of your job as a pen tester too is to not only show them the holes in the network, what it is there, but maybe you can offer them advice on what they need to do to fix these holes, to fix these patches, right? And that goes to both the offensive and defensive network and device strategies. You have to understand both sides of the fence to really most successfully handle one side of the fence. You need to know how people are breaking in, how they can break in to successfully defend that. Cybercrime's on the rise. Penetration testing is probably one of the top job positions in the world right now is penetration testing, because they're in the news. You see all these things happening, and people are really looking for before somebody breaks into them. They want to hire consultants and people to try to break in to see what they need, what holes actually exist. And I know even the IT team here on campus, we've had penetration testers come in and to find the holes, right? And then we use their documentation to fix the holes, and they try to hit it again, and those are closed, right? So just to reiterate, to optimally defend a cyber attack, you need to understand both the offensive and the defensive strategies, right? And we have different courses inside of our degree programs that offer some of this technology. We even sometimes have a penetration testing course that's available that teaches you step by step these processes, what you need, what some of these programs are that you use to try to break into these networks. And we have quite a few security courses which bring up different types of software and hardware that you need to use to defend some of this stuff. Any questions? Well, I guess I don't get questions either.
Well, let me just reiterate one thing, because I mentioned that in the chat as well. It's extremely important that you know how to communicate to non-technical people, especially in cybersecurity, because the stakes are so high. That's, I think, one of our advantages of being a liberal arts institution, where we have a good English program in the first place. On top of that, we have a wonderful person who teaches technical writing, and you will have to go through these courses. Whenever I see reports from our students, I'm usually pretty impressed by their writing abilities. And don't underestimate that advantage, because it's how you get money for projects out of upper management, but more importantly, in terms of cybersecurity, it keeps you safer because you can communicate how high the stakes are to non-technical people and what they have to do to stay safe.
Yeah, I think even a lot of our foreign students and stuff, a lot of them have really written some really legible projects and papers and stuff that we've gotten in computer science. So things that can be looked at in the future, if anybody wants to do any little bit of research, you can look up, recent cyber attacks. They happen every single day, right? You can't stop them. There's nothing you can do to stop them. Maybe you could research, the black hat hackers, bad hackers that maybe have been caught and turned to work for the government or for other situations. They've turned into white hat hackers, right? And there's other research you could do, defensive strategies. That's one of the main things, defensive. But to put up a good defense, you have to have a strong offense, right? And vice versa too. So, and one of the main questions that you'll see a lot of times is taking it for granted that you can make an environment 100% secure. Just because you can make it 100% secure right now at this moment in time, that doesn't mean 5 minutes from now that you can't be hacked, because there's all the time patches and updates going around for whatever devices, operating systems, whatever that you have that's working inside the background that you don't really realize. So you never can just install everything, put it there to work, and then take a vacation for 2 weeks. That's just not reality. These government and military environments, they have thousands of people in whole buildings that all they do is watch the network traffic coming in and out of their facility. Who is this? Who is that? They're watching these IP addresses. They're watching these emails back and forth. They even have the ability to look at it right then and see what you're talking between each other back and forth if they wanted to, right, when they're scanning that network. So, but you all the time have to be on your guard, making sure that everything you got can't be compromised.
All right, I really appreciate this presentation, and I appreciate all those items you brought up and the distinction between black and white hat. Students that are on here, feel free to speak up. I'm going to be visiting with you and extract it out. And I understand you all may not be talkers, but I don't know. I think this is among the most interesting of the conversations just far, and it's really got me interested. And I have a lot of questions, and I definitely want to find out more.
Jeff's got his hand up.
Yes, sir. Mr. Cole, feel free, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
This is Jeff Coles with Tea Garden Academy. I have a 6th grader who has a question.
Yeah, let us know your name and let us know where you go to school at.
Hello, my name is Annabelle, and I go to school.
You gotta speak up.
Hello, my name is Annabelle, and I go to Tate Creek Elementary, not elementary, middle school. And my question is, how can black hackers hack the government?
Well, back when I was at EKU, I first started a company with one of my classmates, and we had some hackers that worked for us who were young. They're young guys, 18, 19 years old. And this one guy, I went to his house one day to visit, and because he worked for me part-time, we had some of the school systems that we worked on their computers. So I would go to his house, and inside his garage was probably 30 computers just sitting all around the place, right? And he had other students in there doing different things, right? So this guy, his name was Wendell. I think he's a big company owner now. So he would sit in his chair and roll around on the floor, going to each computer and just banging the keyboard. I mean, just banging it crazy. And I'm just, my mind's like, and he wasn't even really looking at the screen, paying any attention. He would go to the next one, he would bang something. He would go to the next one, he was banging something. So he's dealing with like 10 or 12 computers at this whole time, right at the same time. And I'm just in awe. I'm like, I'm relatively smart to a point. And I asked him, I said, how do you do all this at one time? How does your mind even understand what you're doing? I said, because it's like you're not even looking at the monitor, and you're just doing and you're giving it all 30 commands to run this scripts and these processes. And he said, oh, that's nothing. He said, man, I'm nothing. He said, my little brother's 13 years old. He said, he lives at mom and dad's house out in Eastern Kentucky. And for fun, he hacks government sites. He'll hack the site, send them an email and tell them how he hacked it and how to fix it. He said, 5 minutes later, that hole will be closed. He'll try to hit it again, but he'll never hear anything from the government.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
this kid's 13 years old. So if there's one in Eastern Kentucky, there's no telling how many of them there are. And that was 25 years ago. So, but I guess to answer your question, it takes a lot of training to understand how all these devices work and how all these devices talk to each other. And you have to understand all their relationships, how they talk to each other, how they answer back, to understand how to break in these different ways to do that. It's not just a simple cut and dried 5-step process. If that makes
I think
sense.
when it comes to government, one of the things also that you have to take into account, it's a little bit of an asymmetric problem, right? So the hackers are usually really, really smart guys because there's also usually a lot of money involved. So that's a big incentive. And the government cannot pay as much to defend against these things than a corporation. So Apple and Google, if you work in their cybersecurity department, or actually one of our graduates here from the master's program now handles cybersecurity. He's the lead cybersecurity guy for SpaceX, and he makes God knows how many $100,000 a year doing that, because it's a high stress, high risk, high reward field. But he's as smart as the hackers, and so that takes a lot of time, a lot of skill, and that's why he's worth so much money. Government just cannot pay that much. That's a problem that goes into whenever you see a big government data breach. That's where many of these problems come from.
Right. Here we are, a silent pause.
Good job, Dr. Wise.
I tried.
So where are the where are the opportunities for the real friendly participation in this? So people who are interested and certainly want to only do well, I mean, where do they find the people that are, or how do they get connected to find out, like, you know, people are banding together to take down some evil something, like, I don't know if Anonymous is like that, but something in that vein, like some open and friendly kind of things for people to get in there, do this work, but not be trying to steal money or whatever. I don't know, however you can answer that.
Well, they don't necessarily let out who they are. They're kind of hidden because they, you know, they're a fine line between black hat and gray hat hackers, right? So you still can get prison time, although you think you're doing something good. And actually, here's something. When I owned my company, this same guy, Wendell, that worked for me, we went to lunch one day. So we're sitting, he says, well, check this out. I want to show you something. So we go to Walmart parking lot and he pulls up his laptop and he runs a script. And we're sitting there looking at his laptop screen and all this information, data scrolling down the screen. And I'm like, it's names, data, all this information, right? So he said, you know, because we used to do a lot of remodels and stuff for Walmart stores. So all of those at the front of the stores, and you see them more prevalent now, you have these checkouts, self-checkout lanes, right? Well, those self-checkout lanes are wireless to the back, to the servers in the back of the store, right? So any data that you're scanning your card is going through the air, going to the back of the store. So he ran a script, and every time somebody would scan their card to check out, all their data would scroll right down the screen. So what he did was he contacted a lawyer and said, hey, you know, I've got this potential, this money-making potential. He said, I found this exploit here, this problem, and all Walmart's, and it's still that today. It still exists today. And he's talking to the lawyer. The lawyer said, let me tell you something. He said, regardless if Walmart pays you to show them this information, it's still illegal for you to hack into that and look at that data. He said, so if they pay you to put this packet together to fix this network that they apparently don't know exists, you're still breaking the law and they can put you in prison. And he said, let me show you this. And he had one of his ex clients, this lawyer did, and he said, this guy's in prison right now for doing the similar same thing, because he penetrated this network for this company. The company got mad and he's in prison because of it, because they got mad at him. He said, so the lawyer said, you just need to forget it, drop it, and call it a day, because you're still breaking into the network. He said, it's a fine line. And that's back then, before a lot of this penetration testing and all this kind of stuff come out. This was back 20 years ago. So he said, you're doing good, you want to do good, you'll make a little money on the side, that's fine, but it's still illegal to see another person's data. It's still against the law. So call it a day and forget it. So the thing is, you know, about your question about, you know, there's not what's it called, like black market or something. These hackers stick together behind the scenes. You're not just going to throw an email out there and find out who they are, because they know some of the stuff they do still is questionable, regardless of how logically they justify what they do. There's still potential for prison there. So they talk to each other within their little network, but they don't advertise. They don't need outside people coming in to help them to get involved. And that's part of what you're trying to fight, because they're at some point going to try to get into somebody's network, right, or device.
Well, that brings us right up to the time that we are scheduled to close. This would be the last opportunity for the students, the comp sci interested folks. I appreciate you hanging on to the end. Miss Rogers also is. She let me know that she had to leave just a few minutes ago, but she's very interested in this, and we're going to talk over the next couple of days about what this could look like going forward. Yeah, I really keep thinking about that black hat, white hat distinction there, because a lot of that has to do with narrative. And as the narrative shifts a little bit, these colors start looking brighter or darker over time. So I really appreciate very much your presentation. We'll give you a virtual round of applause here. And any other presenters, if anybody has any closing comments, unless there's a final project, you guys won't appear on the schedule anymore. So feel free to drop any last nuggets.
Well, if you're on campus,
the Caesar Cipher, sorry, the website, it was printing out the answer on the left side of the screen. So. So it's under, so if anyone wants to check that out, you can go back and you'll see the results of your encryption. So sorry, Jens, go ahead.
I gotta say, I mean, if you're on campus and do have time, come check us out. Ideally, let us possibly know a little bit earlier. Right now we have another summer program going on, so at least I will be here on campus on a regular basis for at least another week. So drop by and we'll show you around what we have in terms of labs and facilities and all that. We can talk smack. You can, of course, always reach us offline, right, via email, something like that. Our names are all in the KSU directory. You'll find us there. And if you have specific questions for any of us, just contact us like that.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you all very much for taking basically the whole day out. I really, really appreciate that. All I can say is thank you very much. And everybody, thank you for being in today. We'll start again at 10 o'clock tomorrow. It will be on a different link, but I'll be sending that invitation out at 8 o'clock in the morning. Thank you all. Have a great evening.
All right. Bye.